Hi there and welcome to this week's tumbler tutorial. We are going to be making 2 tumblers for this week's tutorial. We're starting out with 2 20-ounce skinny tumblers from MakerFlo. I am using the quick glitter method to get these tumblers started. Each tumbler is getting about 20 ml of Flynn Sisters Fast Cure Epoxy. I added below zero to that epoxy. Once applied, I sprinkled some more below zero and then some bells on Bobtail on top. Both glitters are from ChaseRaeGlitter. Once cured, I went in with another 15 ml of Flynn Sisters Fast Cure Epoxy before moving on to the next step. Both of these tumblers are getting a full UVDTF wrap. I measured each tumbler, got the dimensions around and top to bottom, and then I laid the masking tape on top of the UVDTF with those measurements, and I cut by hand with scissors to avoid any cracking. Because I'm working with 2 tumblers, I did measure each to get their own dimensions just to ensure I had the proper sizing for each UVDTF wrap, as these tumblers do have epoxy on them and they will not be identical measurements. Applying a UVDTF wrap in full is definitely extremely nerve-wracking, especially a design like this where you want the 2 ends to meet up. My best advice is to do exactly what I'm doing. Continuously wrap around and double check your placement. If anything is off, make adjustments as needed before you start applying the wrap itself. Once you do start applying, go slow. I chose not to use a final squeegee applying this UVDTF for a couple of reasons. If you do not have pressure in the center of that tumbler and it's even pressure the entire way around, you can shift whatever you're applying, whether it's vinyl or a UVDTF, up or down, making it so the end result is not lined up. Knowing this is a UVDTF, it is not readjustable. I chose to roll the tumbler instead, as you will see here. And I'm starting out with a small sliver to start with. Again, once I have this pressed down, I am going to wrap the remaining amount of that UVDTF around my tumbler, assuring that my lines still match up. Now that I verified my lines are still matching up, I'm going to peel back some of that backing, but I'm only going to cut off a little bit. Now, more than I did the first time, but I'm not just taking that backing 100% off. I'm going slow. This is most definitely a nerve-wracking process, and I would say lots of practice will certainly help with the overall application. As I am rolling, I am keeping even pressure on the tumbler, mostly in the center, which is helping with my alignment. So now that I've gotten that section pressed down, I'm going to roll the wrap around the tumbler again, verifying that in fact my lines are still matching up. And now I'm going to move on. This time I am not going to cut anything off. I am going to slowly peel back and roll at the same time. But I will stop when I get to my initial tape line where I did the hinge method to ensure I remove the tape, and then I also remove the starting point of the carrier sheet. I am going to use the painter's tape that I remove here to hold back that beginning portion of the carrier sheet to ensure it is not in my way when I go to roll on the remainder of the UVDTF wrap. You'll see in just a moment what I am talking about. Here I'm trying to ensure that I hold the tumbler steady, not to roll any more of that UVDTF on while I gently tear back this carrier sheet at the very beginning of that wrap. Once I start peeling it back, this is where I need to figure out how to get it out of my way. And that's where that painter's tape came in handy. This was my first time ever fully wrapping a tumbler with a UVDTF wrap, but I know that anybody can do this as long as the precautions are taken to ensure that your lines are matching up and your application is slow. You can do this. Once both tumblers were wrapped, I went in with 10 mLs of Flynn Sisters Fast Cure Epoxy. Once cured, I did a light sand with a 220 grit, and I did a second coat of another 10 mLs of Fast Cure Epoxy on each so that my tumbler was smooth and glossy for the next steps. These gingerbread decals is what made the entire concept for each of these tumblers. Before I went in with my placement, I added some cheap masking tape on my board here. And what I did was I went in with my craft knife and I basically cut at about every centimeter, which gave me these little anchor pieces of tape. So on the very first cup, I'm not just going to go at this freehand. I am going to anchor on each of these elements to make sure that I like the placement, move things around if necessary or as I want them before I go in, because once again, these are UVDTFs and they are permanent once placed. You can find this final wrap, both decals and the element sheet, which I did cut apart into multiple pieces here, but you can find all of these on PDB Creative Studios website. I do have them all individually linked below in the description as well. To create both of these tumblers, I purchased 2 of the full wraps, each decal, and then 2 of the element sheets, which I mentioned before. I did cut them apart and I left the entirety of one sheet in one pile to go with one cup, and then the other sheet cut up in another pile to go with the other cup, just to ensure I had the equal amount of elements on each tumbler. Originally, I was going to add this little tree on the bottom of the boy gingerbread tumbler. However, I had a boy gingerbread UVDTF left over, and so I decided to put that on the bottom instead. Here we go with the application process. So we're going to go slow, working with the main decal first, which is what I had anchored down originally, and then we are going to go one little decal at a time. Making tumblers 100% out of UVDTFs is a lot of peel, stick, and peel again. However, you just can't beat the color payout of a UVDTF. I tried to make sure that I added the anchor tape to where I felt it would be the easiest to keep it anchored as I applied the UVDTFs. So I'm basically flipping them either up or down in most cases, taking off that back sheet and then flipping them back towards the tumbler and placing them on firmly. In some cases, I did apply, I think, the tree at more of an angle. But for the most part, I tried to go from the top or from the bottom. For me, that was the easiest way to place them. You will see me add the same decals onto the second tumbler. The only reason why that's in this tutorial is because I used a separate method and I wanted to ensure I showed that. Using the first tumbler as a guide, I am going in semi-freehand here, starting off with the decal first. I am going to apply the first few elements freehand without anchoring them down first for what I want the design to look like. Once I get to the back side of this tumbler, I am going to anchor down the remaining amount of elements that I have. The reason for this is because I chose to use the gingerbread that I had added to the bottom of the first tumbler. I'm going to add that to the actual tumbler here and not on the bottom, as I want both bottoms to be different. So I needed to ensure I had enough room to add an extra element. I had some leftover snowflakes from last week's Winter Wonderland tumbler that I posted, and so I'm going to add some of those snowflakes to each of these tumblers. I literally save everything. All of my scraps from peekaboos, my pinstriping, and I will tell you that they come in handy all of the time. So another part of the element sheet, it had little red stars and different sized snowflakes. So I'm going around each of the tumblers and adding them, trying to ensure that I have them scattered relatively evenly. Because the application for these stars and snowflakes was very time consuming, I'm only going to show the application on one actual tumbler. This did take me quite a while just because it's a lot of pulling the back off, sticking down, and then peeling off that carrier sheet. I decided to add a little more to the bottom, and so because I save everything, I found a lot of different pinstriping that actually would work good with these tumblers. So I chose black, holographic silver, and a chrome red. I apologize, I do not know the sizing of these, as again, these are just leftover pieces from different designs I've done in the past. And I'm applying all of these pinstripes with 0 striping tape. As the design is already plaid, I already have a guide to work with. So no need for striping tape here. I am going to apply this red chrome in the center of the silver holographic. The pinstriping is the same for both of the tumblers, and I'm going in now and making a different bottom for one of the tumblers that I did not apply the gingerbread man to, as I wanted them to be different. Once I had all elements added to each tumbler, I then went in with polyacrylic to seal everything in. I then mixed 20 ml of Flynn Sisters Artist Cure Epoxy, so that would be 10 ml per tumbler, and I added crushed diamonds from ChaseRaeGlitter. And that completes this week's tumbler tutorial. 2 tumblers in one. They are both adorable. They both have so much depth and dimension, and each have the same elements, but they're not in the same exact place. And of course, the bottoms are different. If you like this week's tutorial, please go ahead and give it a thumbs up. If you would like to see more of my content, please subscribe, and I'll see you again next week. Thank you all. See you again soon.